Welcome to Let's Talk Criterion, and we have some excellent releases coming your way in June. And because there's a lot of information this month, we'll be splitting it over two editions featuring releases from the beginning to the middle of June and then for the latter half of that month. Now, I do love to see young people getting into Criterion, and there's a young YouTuber called Clark Teddles. He's just recently posted his review of Chantal Akerman's Jean Dillman, 23, Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. Now, certainly I long watched this film, and it's a difficult title to get into, with its themes of isolation and apparently humdrum existence, with a bubbling layer of nervous anxiety which erupts into violence at the end. Now, the link to young Clark's channel is below, and I've commented on his video, and I hope he finds time to look at the wider Criterion collection and the treasures out there to be discovered. On to the June releases, and we start with the arrival of Emmerich Pressburger and Michael Powell's classic, The Tales of Hoffman. This film was made in 1951, and it creates a phantasmagoric marriage of cinema and opera in a one-of-a-kind take on a classic story. In Jacques Offenbach's fantasy opera, The Tales of Hoffman, a poet dreams of three women, a mechanical performing doll, a bejeweled siren, and the consumptive daughter of a famous composer, all of whom break his heart in different ways. Powell and Pressburger's feverishly romantic adaptation is a feast of music, dance, and visual effects, and one of the most exhilarating opera films ever produced. Now, these directors were the kings of Technicolor, and their presentations were indeed a visual feast. With films like Black Narcissus, The Red Shoes, The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, and A Matter of Life and Death already in the collection, there's plenty to choose from. Now, this story isn't new to film, and there was the 1916 silent version from Richard Oswald, and the 1923 silent version also some years later, directed by Max Neufeld, perhaps a better known version. The Tales of Hoffman, in French, Les Contes d'Hoffmann, is an opera fantastique by Jacques Offenbach. The French libretto was written by Jules Barbier, and it was based on three short stories by E.T.A. Hoffman, who is the protagonist of the story. Now, it was Offenbach's final work, and he died in October 1880, 4 months before the premiere. Powell and Pressburger split the film into three stories, a prologue and an epilogue. In the later years of his partnership with Pressburger, Powell became interested in what he termed a composed film. That's a marriage of image to operatic music. The finale of Black Narcissus and the ballet sequence of The Red Shoes were earlier steps towards this goal. The Tales of Hoffman is an achievement of this ideal, as the entire opera was pre-recorded to create the soundtrack, and the movie was edited to the rhythms of the music. Now, the production is completely without dialogue, and with the exception of Robert Rounseville and Anne Ayers, none of the actors did their own singing. Some of the singers had established careers in Britain at the time. For instance, Graham Clifford, for example, had been a leading comedian with the Dolly Cart Opera Company for several years, and Monica Sinclair was fast becoming an audience favourite at Covent Garden. Now, she would later become one of the company's most popular artists of the next 2 decades. Now, each tale is marked by a primary colour denoting its theme. For instance, the tale of Olympia, set in Paris, has yellow contours highlighting the farcical nature and tone of the first act. The tale of Giulietta is a hellish depiction of Venice, where dark colours, especially red, are used, and the final tale set in Greece uses different shades of blue, alluding to its sad nature. Now, the set design is deliberately made to look artificial, with the costumes similarly stylised. The opening scene of the Tale of Giulietta, where Giulietta performs the Baccarole, the most famous theme of the opera, is staged on a gondola, which moves through deliberately artificial Venetian canals, although it does not seem to actually move on the water itself. Now, this attention to detail was a hallmark of Powell and Pressburger and their Archers production company. Hoffman's played by Robert Rounseville. Maura Shearer, who starred in The Red Shoes, of course, plays Stella Olympia, with Anne Ayers as Antonia and Robert Helpman, of course, as Lindolf, Coppelius, Dappertutu and Dr. Miracle, 4 separate characters. It uses a soundtrack recorded for the film conducted by Sir Thomas Beecham. Principal singers apart from Rounseville and Ayers were Dorothy Bond, Margarita Grandi, Monica Sinclair and Bruce Dargavel, and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra plays the score. Now, the film's production team includes cinematographer Christopher Challis and production and costume designer Hein Heckroth, and he was nominated for 2 1952 Academy Awards for his work. The Tales of Hoffman received 2 nominations that year. Hein Heckroth for Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Colour, and Best Costume Design Colour, and the awards in both cases unfortunately went that year to The Crew of an American in Paris. Powell and Pressburger were nominated for the Grand Prix of the 1951 Cannes Film Festival and won the Exceptional Prize. And they also won the Silver Bear Award for its first Berlin International Film Festival, and that was for Best Musical. And now I know, of course, Criterion can't release every film in 4K, but I do think this was missed just being brought out on Blu-ray, as it is a sumptuous Technicolor image to behold. Now the extras on this disc are an audio commentary from 1992 by the filmmaker Martin Scorsese and the critic Bruce Ader, newly updated by Ader. An interview with filmmaker George A. Romero from 2005. The Sorcerer's Apprentice from 1956, that's a short musical film based on the Johann Wolfgang von Goethe story and directed by Michael Powell. A collection of production designer Hein Heckroth, design sketches and paintings, and a gallery of production and publicity photographs as well. And a written essay by the film historian Ian Christie. Now the cover art for the Tales of Hoffman is superb, and that's based indeed on a theatrical poster, also designed by Hein Heckroth. Now this version of the film is the 2015 4K restoration of the film produced by Martin Scorsese, the Film Foundation, the BFI and Studio Canal, and it was released in the US by Rialto Pictures. This restored version runs at 136 minutes and includes a final credits sequence of all the performers and singers not seen in any previous releases. The Tales of Hoffman's already a former DVD release in the collection, and now it releases on Blu-ray in the US only at this stage at Spine 317 on Tuesday the 7th of June. Next up we have the debut directorial feature from Ekwa Mazangi, Farewell Amor. Now this was released in 2020. It went largely unnoticed due to cinemas still being closed at the time, and it got lost in the maelstrom of streaming content and major studio movies getting their streaming priorities in the attempt to recover lost box office revenue with their blockbusters. However, this film, as with many independent features, sparkles in its own right. Now in the film, Ekwa chronicles a broken family's journey to wholeness with empathy and insight. 17 years after his family was separated by the civil war in Angola, a New York taxi driver, Natari Gumba Mawau Memini, is reunited with his now devoutly religious wife Zainabia and teenage daughter Jane Lawson. Now when they are finally able to follow him to America, after living thousands of miles apart for so long, the three find they must discover one another's strengths, forgive one another's weaknesses, and bridge cultural and generational divides in order to build a life together. Told in 3 perspective-shifting chapters that honour the multitude of struggles and emotions that make up the immigrant experience, Farewell Amor is a bittersweet, compassionate evocation of how it feels when your heart and your home are in different places. Mazangi was born to immigrants in Oakland in California. Her parents were Fulbright scholars who attended Stanford University in the 1980s. She was raised in Kenya after her family moved back when she was 5 years old. In 1998, she was accepted into the NYU Tisch School of the Arts, where she earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film and Television. But she was initially discouraged and confused, and her trajectory changed somewhat after she took a course given by African film historian Manthia Dewara. Now, she earned an MA in African cinema from the Gallatin School of Individualized Study at the same university. Her filmography is short so far, with Block D from 2009, Taha Ruki, a short film from 2011, Soko Soko from 2016, another short, the prequel of Farewell Amor called Farewell Mieux Amor from 2016, followed by the full-length feature, of course, made in 2019. Now the film has a massive cast led by Natari Memwini as Walter, Zainabia as Esther, Jane Lawson as Sylvia, and Joy Lee as Nzinga. Now the film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. It was released on December 18th, 2020 on Mubi, and it was screened at the 51st International Film Festival of India in January of 2021 in the World Panorama section. Now, it's great to see that Criterion has picked it up for more worldwide exposure, as usually the releases of little-known films definitely considerably raise their profile and open them to a much wider audience. I urge you to give this film a try. Criterion have produced a new 2K master of it, and it's approved by the director with a 5.1 surround soundtrack on the disc. The features on the disc are a new audio commentary featuring Mazangi and the cinematographer Bruce Francis Cole. 3 short films made by Mazangi: Suspense from 2011, The Market King from 2014, that short I mentioned, Farewell Amor from 2016, that's a prequel to Farewell Amor, and there's new interviews with actors Natari Gumba Mimweni and also Zainab Ya and James Lawson, and deleted scenes, and a written essay by the scholar Tiana Reid. And the new cover art for the disc is by Motion. Farewell Amor has a running time of 102 minutes, and it releases in the US only on Tuesday the 14th of June, and of course it is a new spine number, and that's 1128. Now, in the UK, we have been lucky this year so far to get 2 Jim Jarmusch films released in the collection. We already have had Down by Law, and now we are going to get Dead Man, featuring Johnny Depp. Now, of course, the Amber Heard case is giving him a lot of publicity at this time, and he's somewhat of a Hollywood outcast since that broke publicly. In Dead Man, you cannot argue he gives a great central performance, though under Jarmusch's strong direction as Accountant William Blake. In Dead Man, Jarmusch imagines the 19th century American West as an existential wasteland, delivering a surreal reckoning with the ravages of industrialization, the country's legacy of violence and prejudice, and the natural cycle of life and death. Accountant William Blake, Johnny Depp, has hardly arrived in the god-forsaken outpost of Machine before he's caught in the middle of a fatal lover's quarrel. Wounded and on the lam, Blake walks under the watch of the outcast nobody, Gary Farmer, who guides his companion on a spiritual journey, teaching him to dispense poetic justice along the way. Featuring austerely beautiful black and white photography by Robbie Mueller and a live wire score by Neil Young, Dead Man is a profound and unique revision of the Western genre. Now, the film, dubbed a psychedelic Western by its director, includes twisted and surreal elements of the Western genre itself. The film is shot entirely in monochrome. Neil Young composed the guitar-dominated soundtrack, with portions he actually improvised while watching the movie footage. Many have considered it a premier postmodern Western. It has been compared to Cormac McCarthy's novel Blood Meridian. Now, the film itself contains many references to William Blake's poetry. Zebech, aka Nobody, recites from several Blake poems during the film, including Auguries of Innocence, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and The Everlasting Gospel. And when bounty hunter Cole warns his companions against drinking from standing water, it references the proverb of hell from the aforementioned marriage. Expect poison from standing water. Thell's name is also a reference to Blake's The Book of Thel. The scenes with Thel, culminating in the bedroom murder scene, visually enact Blake's poem, The sick rose, O rose thou art sick, the invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark secret love does thy life destroy. The film's soundtrack album and promotional music video also features Depp reciting passages from Blake's poetry to music Neil Young composed for the film. Dead Man's generally regarded as well researched in regard to Native American culture as well. The film itself is one of the few made about Native Americans to be directed by a non-native, that offers a nuanced understanding over the individual differences between Native American tribes, with considerable detail given that is relatively free from common stereotypes. The film intentionally leaves conversations in the Cree and Blackfoot languages untranslated and without any subtitles, for the exclusive understanding of members of those nations, and there's even some in-jokes aimed at the Native American viewers. Nobody was also played by a First Nations actor, Gary Farmer, who is Kaliuga, and the film was entered into the 1995 Cannes Film Festival, but sadly won no awards that year. In its theatrical release, Dead Man earned over $1 million on a budget of just $9 million. And then it was the most expensive of Jarmusch's films, due in part to the costs of ensuring accurate period detail. Critical responses for the film were mixed. Roger Ebert gave the film 1.5 stars, noting Jim Jarmusch is trying to get at something here, but I don't have a clue what it is. Desson Howe and Rita Kempley, both writing of course for the Washington Post, offered largely negative reviews, and Greil Marcus, however, mounted a spirited defence campaign from the film, titling his review Dead Again. Here are the 10 reasons why Dead Man is best movie of the end of the 20th century. The features on the disc are a new 4K digital restoration of supervised and approved by director Jim Jarmusch, a new Q&A in which Jarmusch responds to questions sent in by fans, rarely seen footage of Neil Young composing and performing the film's score, a new interview with actor Gary Farmer, new readings of William Blake poems by members of the cast, and that includes Millie Avital, Alfred Molina and Iggy Pop, a new selected scene audio commentary by production designer Bob Zimbicki and sound mixer Drew Coonan, deleted scenes from the film, Jarmusch's location scouting photos, and of course, as always, a written essay both by film critic Amy Taubin and the music journalist Ben Ratliff. So the cover art for the disc is by Nassim Higson, and the film certainly isn't one of Jarmusch's best, with other works like Down by Law and Mystery Train bettering this by far, but it's an interesting film and certainly worth a watch. Dead Man comes to the UK collection and it's Spine 919, and it's available from Monday the 19th of June. And that ends it for the first part of June's Let's Talk Criterion. In the second part, I will be back with the final part of the month's releases. So until then, from me, as always, goodbye and good viewing.